She joined us on her first day as mayor. 1 year later, she returns to reflect and project.
What about grading yourself?
I think
as
the
the
grade
mayor?
is the city. Seattle gets an A+, and I'm catching up.
And we welcome culinary superstar and winner of 2 prestigious James Beard Awards, Chef Edouardo Jordan.
To get my name called for best chef of the region just kind of blew my mind, and then I was like, uh-oh.
It's all coming up on Civic Cocktail.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to an action-packed Civic Cocktail. I'm Joni Balter here this evening with Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan, who has been in office 1 full year. Journalists helping with the questions this evening, Jim Bruner of the Seattle Times, and Joshua McNichols from KUOW. Hi, Mayor Durkan.
How are you, Joni?
Pretty good. Thanks for being here. I know you've been on TV, radio pretty much all day, so
I know
glad
you
to have
said it
you
was
here.
1 year, but then I heard you say under your breath dog years. Did it feel
No,
that long
nothing
to you?
like dog years.
Okay.
Nothing like. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
I feel like we'll get to that. And speaking of that, would you like to give yourself a grade? And I'd like to point out that former Mayor Greg Nichols once famously, maybe infamously, gave himself a B for the 2008 snowfall, how the city handled it. And Donald Trump, who missed it, recently gave himself an A+. I don't know why, but he did. So where does that leave you?
Well,
for
Donald
grading your
Trump
first
also
year?
said he was one of those highly intelligent people who didn't believe in climate change. I'd say I'm one of those highly intelligent people who does believe in climate change.
I see. What about grading yourself?
I think
as
the grade
mayor?
is the city. Seattle gets an A+, and I'm catching up.
That's very nice. Okay, so we'll go from that answer to you just completed what I viewed as a fairly mild-mannered budget process, but there were some tense moments. I think I met with you one of those days. What was the tensest moment during the budget, and what are you most proud of budget-wise?
I think the budget process itself, I'm very proud of, because we approach this budget very differently. From the very beginning, we went department by department to really look at what were the most important things we had to prioritize. And I walked into a budget where there were tens of millions of dollars of things that had been financed by previous council and administration actions that weren't funded by the revenues we had. So there was a big shortfall. So we went in and department by department found efficiencies so we could prioritize the money, and found almost $50 million that then we were able to fund those programs we cared most about without raising taxes.
Wait, found?
Found by efficiency. So, you know, and I think it's a good juxtaposition. You know, I know you're going to ask about the head tax, but
What? Me?
Stunning. Newsflash. So we had the head tax, and it was a long played out. You could describe it with different adjectives, but with that, we lost about $48 million in revenues. By our budgeting process, we were able to find $50 million to make sure that we could have those programs that we prioritize, like making sure that we had programs to bring people off the street into safe shelter.
So, speaking of the head tax, this has not been the easiest first year for a mayor. There were a couple, bummer moments. What do you wish you had done differently from the start with the head tax? So just bear your feelings to this small group.
So, little known fact is, and my staff is going to cringe, is none of them are here, I'm sure, is I sometimes bring up bad movie quotes. So after the head tax, I quoted the world famous Rocky Balboa and said, the person that wins is not the fighter that can punch the hardest, but the one that can take the hardest punch. And the head tax was hard. It was hard on everyone in City Hall. It was hard with people on both sides of that debate. We tried to get a compromise that we thought was the compromise that was the best way forward, that we thought had a lot of support, and people who did support it changed their minds. But then we listened, and I think it's a good thing when government listens to the people.
But if you could change one thing that you did, what would you have done differently on that?
You know, I think that in hindsight, what we should have done is engage larger Seattle in the conversation. Because I walked in, if you remember, the head tax was already underway. They had voted in the previous budget to have the working group, and so it was already in progress. And we did not have the opportunity, I think, to really go into neighborhoods and communities to talk about the pros and cons. And the other thing that, we were fighting a stiff headwind, and that headwind was people just didn't believe that our spending on homelessness was making a difference. And we knew we had to show that it was and show them where the money was going. So I think in the past year, by showing that government can be responsible, in that moment in time, every journalist and a lot of people in town were saying, taxes are dead, DOA. And we just had Seattle passed by almost 70%, a levy to tax themselves because they believe in the future of this city for education. So that shows that we can do it.
I want to get to that, but I want to stay with the second big bummer that everybody...
Is that peace or you're done?
That's the second. That's
okay.
the second notable bummer. There was the hiring of a police chief. I'm sure most people in this audience know that current chief, Carmen Best, was not on the list of finalists. What do you wish you had done differently with that?
We had a process in place that was very long, with a long search committee, with evaluators, and did it. And I will say this, people can say what they want about the process. What I care about, we got the best damn police chief. And that's all we love to talk about and think about the process in Seattle. Let's talk about results. And the result is, we got Carmen Best. I talk to her multiple times a day. I've seen her in action. Today we're in Southwest Precinct together at roll calls. And I'm just happy we got the right chief.
So on the plus side, as you mentioned there, you got this huge vote in favor of a very large education levy. And so what does that mean for you for this first year in office?
It's not what it means for me, really. It's what it means for Seattle. This is one of the things we can do that I think will be the single most game changer for opportunity and equity. Because you look at Seattle and we're expecting somewhere around 700,000 jobs to be created in the Pacific Northwest in the next 5 years. Mind-blowing. But of those jobs, most of them will require some post-high school, college certificate degree training. Only 30% of our kids were getting it. So we were telling 70% of our kids, those jobs aren't for you. Now they're going to get it.
So what percentage would it go up to?
Oh, I think, if we're going to have not just the free college, but we're going to make sure that first we got great preschool, so kids get to school ready to learn. We're going to close that opportunity gap so more kids of color actually walk across the stage and get their diploma. And then we're going to work with the great employers in this city, whether it's the union trades or the tech companies or the baristas, and we're going to find good family wage jobs and start getting our kids into those jobs in an earlier, from high school on, so that when they graduate, we're giving them the skills they need for the careers they're going to have. It's going to be amazing.
So since we skipped the whole grading thing here, let's do...
What?
No, I'm done.
How would you grade Civic Cocktail?
Awesome.
A plus.
Well, there you go. So let's go to one of the reviews of you, which was in the Seattle Times, and they said that, described you as, a couple stumbles at the beginning, but gaining momentum now. Is that fair?
I think that we have been doing stuff all along the way. So I would actually say that many of the great things we're doing, it's kind of like the iceberg, and the press focuses on that part that's above the water. But to govern, you've got to get well below the surface. I mean, one of the numbers I'm most proud of is I walked in the door, there were almost 74,000 backlog of customer questions and complaints at our call center for SPU and our utilities. 74,000 people waiting for a call back.
For how long?
For a very long time.
Doesn't sound good.
No, it was bad. And so we said, unacceptable. If we can't deliver basic city services, people aren't going to trust us to do the big things. So we devised a new system and plan, put it together. We drove it to 0 in 3 months. That took a lot of effort. That kind of thing shows that when we roll up our sleeves, we can get it right.
Jim Brunner.
Mayor Durkan, I'll go back to the head tax and get at the iceberg still maybe and look at the future. A lot of the advocates who said that money was needed, and you were one of them at one point.
An advocate, or?
Well, there was a feeling that the money was needed to solve a major crisis in this city. We all know what happened with the repeal. Going forward, is that entire concept, dead to you, or is there some alternate tax that would hit at some of the same, wealthier businesses or people in the city? Where are you looking to get new revenue for this? Or Do you think that the solution is, as you said, just continue to scrape the city budget and find new efficiencies?
I think we've got to do all of the above, Jim. I think it's telling that when we really put our mind to it, we were able to find $50 million in the budget to reprioritize to those things that mattered. At the same time, it is clear that the city of Seattle can't go it alone. We can't tax ourselves enough to fix the housing problem and the homeless problem we have. It's one reason I have been so insistent on bringing the county and the state and the other cities to the table, because we have a regional problem. And so I think we've got to look regionally first. You know, I've had conversations with the governor, with Speaker Chop, with the Senate leaders, as well as Dow Constantine, and we are going to do an all-out effort to make sure that the state funds more housing, because our critical need right now is housing, and both deeply affordable housing for people who are poor, but also for middle-income housing, because the middle-income people in Seattle are getting priced out of this market.
Are you going to pursue a new revenue source, though, on a regional basis, possibly through the county-wide plan that, has been worked on?
I think it is a mistake for everyone always to jump to taxes. What are we going to do for taxes? I think what we have to look at is the whole system through. I'd like for the state to get more progressive types of taxes, and I think this is the session to do it. So if, that itself would solve a whole range of issues.
Tax?
Look, I've been around this town a long time and don't believe that, we're going to have an income tax anytime soon. I think we should have one. But I hope that they look at least at a capital gains tax this session, because that's a tax that is fair against those types of properties that are generating income. And if you have that, the state will be better resourced, because one of the issues we have, for example, when we're dealing with people experiencing homelessness is our budgets for behavioral health, mental health, and addiction services in particular are super underfunded. That's a state obligation. We need the state and the county to be at the table for those.
Joshua Wagner.
We're entering, or perhaps we've already entered, what engineers call the period of maximum constraint. And that's the time when a whole bunch of construction projects basically contribute to gridlock in the city, right? And so I'm wondering, what's your plan? I mean, I saw an early document with a lot of projects in them. Some of those projects have been pulled back. I know the levy didn't bring in as much money or overpromised on projects. So, but I'm looking for vision and wondering what your vision is and how you can do that without a director of the Seattle Department of Transportation.
Yeah, so let's unpack that a little bit. So everyone in Seattle, we've had before all these, warnings of via doom, and things never seem to be as bad as they were predicted to be. This one will be. And
Can you explain the period of maximum
MaxCon,
constraint?
yeah.
MaxCon, really tight.
So
Just
there's
make
two
sure
components
everybody
of it, just so people know. So the first part of it is we've got to remove the viaduct and take it down and open the tunnel. So there'll be a period of weeks in which basically all the roads in and around the waterfront will be closed. Communities most impacted, really sorry if you're from West Seattle, just stay here tonight. No, it's going to be hard. So we're looking, area by area. So for example, working with the county and Metro, we're going to add at least one water taxi. So there'll be more going back. We're adding circulator buses to pick people up, bring them to either the water taxi or to the rapid ride and to the other bus lines. So that in that area, we're doing that. We're also then, once the viaduct work is done, we're going to have a period of time which is going to be probably the most difficult, because in building the convention center, they are closing the bus tunnel to buses. So all of the buses that are currently in the tunnel forever. Because that tunnel will never have buses in it again because of the rail capacity. So we will have, during the initial period, and probably increasing, around 525 buses an hour in downtown Seattle. So just by pure math and the road space we have, so we have to do everything.
Who doesn't want to be mayor of that?
Right. Exactly. I mean, what an opportunity. The time to be mayor, 6 years from now. And I'm going to leave a big sign that says, "You're welcome."
That's a deal point.
So getting back to the plan, and we do have a plan, and it requires a whole lot of things. Number one, it requires everybody to try to change their commuting behavior. If you can get out of your single occupancy vehicle coming into Seattle, you have to do it. So we're working with all the large employers to see how they can reduce trips. The city of Seattle itself is going to be reducing trips by having more flex time and more telecommuting. And we're going to do it on a very systematic basis. We're going to have more bus-only lanes on 6th Avenue. 3rd Avenue will remain all buses. We're going to Olympia to get the authority to have camera enforcement for bus lanes, bike lanes, and block in the box, which we can't do right now. And it doesn't do any good to have a cop standing out there because if they pull over a car, everything backs up. We also are working, we're going to have a 24/7 response with cameras so that if we see there's an accident, we purchase new vehicles to get it cleared as quickly as possible. We're going to be subsidizing transit as much as we can. We're talking to North and South about increasing their park and ride capacity so people can actually get on light rail, get on the rapid line lines.
So here's a follow-up question, because when I put out on Twitter...
Jetpacks.
Right, jetpacks. When I put out on Twitter, what do people want to ask you about? A lot of people said that you're, because of limited funding perhaps, you're prioritizing projects that favor cars and delaying projects that fund transit. For example, rapid ride lines, are not being rolled out because there's a funding limitation, but you're not prioritizing it, and investing instead in smart street lights, smart traffic lights that move cars faster, but don't necessarily help as much in terms of buses.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that because we are actually investing more in transit than we ever have before, and we are pushing. We have a couple limitations, not only the money, but right now, we can't get more buses, for example. Metro has basically reached its capacity on buses and drivers. So we're trying to expand what does that pool look like as quickly as possible. We want to get rapid ride, particularly in Madison, moving as quickly as possible. And if you want to talk about a mayor who's in favor of transit, for the first time ever, every Seattle public school student has a free transit card. They're going everywhere on transit. And that's going to get them not only around the city and be able to do things they couldn't do before, it's going to create a culture of transit. We're also investing in smart transit. So like I said, having the shuttle buses go around to bring people to the transit places. We're trying to make sure that we get more bus lanes, that we really enforce the bus lanes. You know, we have to have a city. I mean, the one good thing that's come out of this really bad time is people will use transit more, and we will acculture ourselves to that. So when we come out the other end, if we do it right, people suddenly will realize they don't need to be in their single occupancy vehicle. They can carpool, they can get on rapid ride. Light rail will open up soon, at least in the district in Northgate. So we've got to have as much good transit as we can. We have to make the city in the future friendly for bikes and for walking. And we have to use each of those transit stations to be that neighborhood of the future. You know, we've all been to that city that we love when you get out of the metro or the subway and you come up and there's the great little cafes and restaurants and the plazas. That's going to be Seattle. Squint your eyes. It's going to take a while. Sorry, I was going on.
To a different topic here.
I love transit.
Transit loves you. Okay. Were your feelings hurt when...
Were my feelings hurt?
When Amazon announced that it was going to open what you called branch offices, branch campuses.
Was I right?
In Virginia and New York. Does that make Seattle look good or bad the way this ended up?
There's no large company in the world that doesn't have a footprint like that. And if you're a company who has a range of businesses, both horizontally and vertically, you've got to be positioned not just all over this country, but globally. So I don't read too much into it. I think we are still the home of Amazon. You know, it's actually a coincidence, because I was thinking about opening a second Seattle.
And what did you pick?
I realized we're the only one.
Jim.
Speaking of Seattle, you know, we've got Seattle City Council elections coming up. It seems like there's a candidate announcing every day for various seats. We've even got a Beto who's announced, not that Beto, but who's announced against Councilmember Sawant, I believe. Are you going to be backing candidates in the city council races? And whether or not you are or not, are there types of voices that you think are lacking on the Seattle City Council and that some new people could come in and fill that void?
I know this is going to sound surprising, but I think those races are a year away. And we want to see kind of how the field develops. So I'm not going to commit to endorsing or not endorsing. If there's people who I think are really good, I'll let it be known. And if there's times I think it shouldn't be weighed in, I won't weigh in. But I think we're going to see a different range of voices. I think that if there is a silver lining to the president we have, that silver lining is people are engaged. And the place they can be engaged is right here in Seattle. So I want as many people who think they can serve, run. The more, the better.
Is there a silver lining to the streetcar? When are you going to make a decision on that?
I just got a letter from a constituent who had a whole poem about the streetcar named Expire. I want to say that was them, not me. Just because
Yeah,
you asked the hard questions.
So long?
Look, what's taken so long is Seattle did a really poor job of being honest about what it was going to cost to build and what it was going to cost to run. And I want to have the right numbers. And when we got the report back, they said, you know, there's this big engineering study we haven't done yet, which is the cars are longer
So they
and
don't
heavier.
really fit at the stations?
Well,
or
and
they
we
do
know
fit at the
exactly.
stations?
Well, and we know in the maintenance barn that they need to expand it because they have to do it. So the other thing is we have to see if the turning radius and the weight works. So we're waiting for that to get completed.
You seem like you maybe don't love the streetcar, but aren't
I
sure
actually
what
think
to
the
do with
streetcar
it.
is cool. But we also have to be honest about what it's going to cost, and then we've got to engage as a city and decide, is that our priority? We know we need more transit. Is it the right transit? That's what we've got to decide, and it might be. I mean, you go to other cities that have working streetcar systems, and it's cool. And it gets people there, and you look at it, and it has this sense of a city with a purpose. And, you know, I grew up thinking the monorail was cool. And my kids love the streetcar. You know, I want that city for the next generation. So I'm not judging it. I know we need more transit. We want to get the numbers, and then we've got to decide as a city, is this the transit we want? And if it is, then we got to find a way to move forward.
Some folks think we missed the boat by banning electric scooters. Too many transportation images in there, I realize.
It's so funny. Every mayor who's got them comes up to me and says, don't take them.
Really?
And the reason is, if you talk to the trauma docs,
Oh,
the
I have talked to the trauma
yeah,
docs,
the number
and
of
they're
people
riled
who
up
are
about
hurt and injured. And I
But
used
same
to
with
do,
the bicycles, they don't have
No,
helmets.
actually, we've been very careful looking at Harborview to see if the number of head injuries are expanding because of the lack of helmets. They haven't been yet, but every city that has scooters has had significant traumatic injuries. And, you know, one trauma doc was quoted as saying, it's like we forgot everything about seatbelts, helmets, and other safety equipment. And so, you know, look, I know that some people think that scooters are fun. I think the danger of them and the demonstrated danger of them and the liability of the city, a couple cities now are paying out millions of dollars in judgments for people who are hurt because you're the city saying, here, use a scooter.
And not even a helmet on that, or
No
on the dock with
helmet,
spikes.
no experience, it goes 18 miles an hour. I mean, I think that, you know, they can be fun for people, but for the city to say we're going to put them in our right of way and have people use them knowing they're going to get hurt, I don't think that's responsible.
Go ahead, Joshua.
There have been a couple of high-profile challenges to things that the city's been moving forward with, like backyard cottages is one, bike lanes is another one in some neighborhoods. I'm wondering how you decide when you're going to work with, when you're going to stand up and fight and when you're going to settle. How do you make those decisions?
You know, I think it really depends on the issue and what the timeline looks like. You know, take backyard cottages. We need them. And we've got to find a way to get them and get them reasonably. You know, I introduced some legislation, and my vision, what we're working on right now is, depending on the size of your lot, I think it would be ideal for someone to be able to go down to our Office of Planning, and if you want one of these 3 designs, here's the blueprints, here's the design, here's some contractors that can build it, and we'll give you a permit in 30 days. If you want something that's super fancy, go to the back of the line. You know, if you want to build a cottage that's really bigger than the house that was ever here, we're not for that. But we know we need more density, and backyard cottages are a way that we can add more density in a way that's super smart. And if you have a backyard cottage and a mother-in-law, you can have suddenly the equivalent of a triplex on a house. And if you do it right, you know, people will rent out that backyard cottage and have somewhere to live and be able to work. You know, what's happening right now in Seattle is, you know, people can't afford to live here. And you talk to the small businesses in Seattle, which are like the heart of our area, and their employees are commuting farther and farther distances. We need more alternatives. So it really depends on what the issue is, but there's some things that we will always fight for, like our gun safety legislation. You know, they can take me to the Supreme Court of the United States and we will stand and fight for it. On land use stuff, if there's a way we can find to actually deliver stuff sooner so that we can start adding density, I think that's worth talking about, whether there's a way to do that. Because litigation slows everybody down.
True.
So
look who has a question here. Hi, Tom Douglas.
that's right. Who's
Hello.
house?
Your actual house.
That's
Welcome
right.
to our house. I
All
appreciate
right,
that.
thank you.
1 year ago today, you took office right in this very room, I think, almost.
I know, right?
Pretty
that
much.
evening.
That's why they call it, oh, never mind.
I have a couple of short questions.
All right.
One is for my coworkers who are getting priced out of Seattle. It's our #1 reason why people are leaving this city. And I was wondering if somehow or another we could be honest as a city council and a mayor's office when we raise transit taxes or when we fund school levies, things like that, those are passed to everybody. And I think there's a sense that these youngsters who are working in our restaurants are just sticking it to the landlord, and they don't quite get the fact that it's actually everyone pays for that. So I would like that to be more clear in our legislative process. The other question I have.
That was a statement.
That was a statement. So
Did I tell you he was running? Tom Douglas for City Council.
there you go. The other one is from our business associates down in the Pike Place Market, which I think is the heart and soul of Seattle. And you know, you have an opportunity to keep the entrance and exit of the south of the Battery Street Tunnel open, I believe. And would you consider working on that project? I know it's late in the game, but we're terrified that we're going to eliminate the market from the being able to get to the market for all of our people.
So the engineering on the Battery Street Tunnel is pretty tricky. Just the remediation of that is probably, I don't want to do a price tag, but I've heard north of $100 million. Just because it's not seismically fit. So you basically would have to rebuild that whole tunnel to keep the tunnel open. I don't think that probably makes sense, but we haven't ruled it out. We need something in that corridor. But the market, let me tell you, I'm going to segue to the amazing thing that we will see, you know, within 4 years is the waterfront. And the waterfront, you know, the viaduct coming down, I'm not going to pretend it's going to be really difficult. But the payoff is when we see that come down, I think all of us are going to gasp. That connection again with Puget Sound, and we're going to have a bridge going from the market to the aquarium. And it's going to be awesome. Thank you. And thanks for having us.
So, on homelessness, there's up and down the West Coast, you hear different mayors with different policies. And I know that you met recently with San Francisco Mayor London Breed. Mm-hmm. She sort of has the whole tough love thing going. What do you think of her approach?
So I think you have to look not just up and down the West Coast, but across the country. And I've talked to mayors from most of the major cities, and I've met with, I and Dow Constantine, the county executive, and some business philanthropy providers went down and spent a day in Los Angeles with Mayor Garcetti and with people down there because they passed $1 billion plus levy for homelessness to see what they're doing that works. I met with London Breed and met with her homeless provider to see what they're doing. And really pretty interesting, nobody's really doing that much different than we are. And people are looking to us as well. We found some things we can do better from both of those places. The thing that San Francisco is doing better than us, and we're looking at to do it right now, is when someone comes to what I'll call the front door, you know, they're experiencing homelessness, they come in, we don't ask the right questions to get them the help they need.
What would be the right question?
Why are you here? Why are you experiencing homelessness? For a significant portion of people, it's they missed a month's rent. They got sick, they were out of work, they didn't have their paycheck. And the data is pretty clear that if you then can provide them 3 or 4 or 5 months rent, and you get them stabilized, they won't need shelter system. So if you keep people housed, if you have a stronger diversion system, then you can have fewer people falling into homelessness. And the most expensive part is this emergency delivery system. So I think we can do a much better job of making sure that we go to the upstream causes. The other thing, the foster care system. I mean, heartbreaking story in today's Seattle Times about how they're putting kids up in motels. Yes. Kids age out of the foster care system at 18. I have a 17-and-a-half-year-old. If he was on his own in 6 months, no way he'd survive. And
Yes, I get that.
I'm just telling you, right?
But I have to hold you there because have you heard
Can
that?
I just finish one more thing? 30 to 40% of kids of color who age out of the foster care system immediately become homeless. We got to stop that. That's a state obligation.
Have you heard that Eduardo Jordan can cook a little bit?
Eduardo Jordan is like
He-
amazing.
He wants to say something to you. It turns
does?
out. Yeah, he kind of does.
Just want to say congratulations on 1 year. And
Oh, look at you.
we decided to bring you a cake from Junebaby.
Oh,
A Kentucky bourbon cake.
that is amazing.
All yours, too.
And it's filled with bourbon.
See y'all later. Because I'm a mayor who shares.
Yes.
So, like, can we just say city treasure? Among the things, you know, we've got Tom Douglas in the house. We got Eduardo. If you haven't been to his restaurants, I'm high on him. And I knew he was going to be here today, so I have a little treat for you, too. I won't read the whole thing, but I will tell you this is Chef Eduardo Jordan Day. I get to proclaim things.
She does. She gets to proclaim things.
And I get to proclaim it's your day. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're amazing. So, you know, people like think I'm just like hyperbole when I say that Seattle's the best. Best new restaurants. We are the best.
We have been talking with Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan about her first year at the city's helm. Next up, we
The
meet,
best city.
and we've already met, Eduardo Jordan, winner of 2 James Beard Awards. These are the Oscars of the food world. Thank you. We are pretty psyched to have Eduardo Jordan with us, chef extraordinaire, who won a James Beard Award for Seattle's Junebaby, named Best New Restaurant in America. And he also won Best Chef in the Northwest for work at Salare. Hi, Eduardo.
Hi.
Tell us what your reaction was when you found out you won not 1, but 2 James Beard Awards.
I mean, I was over the top elated with the news. You don't get the information prior. It happens.
Oh, it's like public announcement,
It's
right?
public announcement. You're sitting in that chair just like every other chef, waiting on that announcement. And I didn't realize that the best chef of regions happened before best new restaurant. And so when it was announced that I won for Salare Restaurant, like the first thing that went through my head was like, oh shoot, we might win too.
You're nervous?
And I say that because everyone was talking about Junebaby, and Junebaby was dear to my heart, and it's dear to my heart, and it meant a lot for me to open up that restaurant. And then on the flip side of that,
How long has Junebaby been open?
we've been open a year and a half, a little bit
That's
more than a year and a
fast.
half. Yeah. But there's so many great chefs here in the Pacific Northwest, from Oregon to up here in Seattle, and so I thought it was like a 50-50 chance that I'll win that award, just because I know so many of those great chefs, and it's just, to get my name called for best chef of the region just kind of blew my mind, and then I was like, uh-oh.
Junebaby focuses on food of the American South. Is Seattle kind of an unlikely place for this renaissance of Southern cuisine?
Yes and no. No, because there's so many transplants here from the South. That became like a realization for me once I opened up Junebaby, where there were so many people coming into the restaurant saying, hey, I'm from Kentucky. Hey, I'm from Tennessee. Hey, my grandmother's from Virginia, and this just reminds me of home. Like, this reminds me of grandmother. Some people didn't actually live in the South, but they actually visited the South when maybe their grandparents or mom or someone lived in the South, so that just brought them back. So I think people really appreciate it. And is it too far-fetched? No. Like, the whole great migration of Southern food has, it started on the East and all the way to California and up here. So, no.
Well, let me do it a little different way. Are there ingredients here that really work for that kind of cuisine that, just haven't been expressed this way?
When I think about like Southern food, yeah, it's all about the ingredients. When you think of Southern, it has to be like the ingredients of the South. But I think about the food that we cook at Junebaby is soul food, because it's the food that my ancestors ate that kept them going, that kept them alive. And I thought about those ingredients also, and I started thinking about the farmers that I work with. And my farmers were growing some of the same ingredients here in the Pacific Northwest that I ate in the South. We have peaches here, we have watermelons here, we have collard greens here, we have rutabagas, we have turnips, we have some of the staple ingredients that actually grow in the South. We have actually farmers that grow peanuts, okra. So all of those ingredients are here, and it made sense for me to actually open up the restaurant. If I didn't have farmers that I believed in that could supply those ingredients to me, I probably would not have opened up a Junebaby, because it would have been a hard stretch to actually do it.
You talk a lot in some of the interviews that I've read about food as a history lesson. Can you tell us about the difference between food that slaves and plantation owners ate long ago?
That's the good and the bad of Southern cuisine. There's two sides of it. There's the field food, and there's the big house food. And a lot of the cuisine of the South was developed from the Africans that were brought over as slaves to actually grow sharecrops, cotton and rice, and other ingredients that kind of fueled the South and built the South. From that, the slave owners and plantation owners, they didn't actually have the skill and knowledge to actually cook some of the ingredients or the product that was growing, and so they utilized the skills of these slaves to actually feed their entire household, to feed their dignitaries that came in, and so. So you have like two aspects of Southern cuisine, or Southern cuisine. You have the big house where all the premium and prime ingredients went to the table, and then you have the offcuts that the slaves basically had to make something of, all the offals, all the offcuts and such.
So once again, the man of the house,
oh boy,
John Douglas. He's got to go to the show. I got to get him.
He's been here before. He knows his place. It's fun to see your story. I went through a similar story myself, where you grow up and become the chef and open a few joints. And one of my favorite things to do these days, other than sitting on the phone trying to get a reservation at Junebaby.
I get it.
You know the right people. Come on.
Is to mentor young chefs.
Totally.
I love that.
Totally.
And so, what would you tell people about your story and about being a chef and the responsibilities? It's changed a bit over the years of just being a good cook to being a good citizen and a support to our community.
Totally. I started approximately 13 or 14 years ago in this industry, and it wasn't like the far, far old days where people were throwing pots and throwing hot water at you and screaming at you every day. But I did work in some very intense kitchens. And I didn't necessarily grow up with a mentor in the kitchen. I'm a minority, if you can see or not. And I was actually a big minority in the kitchens that I worked in. I worked in pretty much fine dinings. And so I couldn't relate, and a lot of chefs couldn't really relate to me. So I technically didn't have a mentor, but I walked the walk. I had thick skin. I made it, and I'm here today, and I realized that as I'm making it, I have to give back. I have to give more than what I was given in the industry. And so, it's very important for me to make sure I'm bringing in youth, bringing in young culinarians that I can believe in, that they believe in me, that I can guide them to their future, and I can do cool things like Tom, like invest in these guys afterwards, so, yeah.
Joshua McNichols.
I heard that you chose not to include fried chicken on the menu in your first restaurant.
Correct.
But you did in your second restaurant.
Right.
What was that?
Well, again, I am a black chef. And, when I opened up Salare, Salare represents my culinary journey. I'm trained in French cuisine. I studied Italian cuisine. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest. And when I opened up Salare, I wanted to really represent my culinary journey beyond my history of being a Southerner. And for one, fried chicken monopolizes any menu because everyone loves fried chicken. But I didn't want to be recognized as the fried chicken chef or restaurant when I opened up. So it was very important for me to kind of flex my culinary muscles in a sense, to say, hey, there's other food that I can actually prepare, and I can prepare very well. Let me show you. And so I purposely did not put fried chicken on my menu for that reason, to say, hey, there's other things out here that I can cook.
Well, while we're talking about fried chicken, so legend has it that at Junebaby on Sunday night, the fried chicken is gone, has to be gone by 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Is this possibly a false scarcity in that can't you just make a little more?
I can, but
But you won't. But you won't.
But I will not. But there's a very, very good reason why I limit the amount of fried chicken on my menu, and the reason why I put it on Sunday is because fried chicken used to be a luxury back in the day for slaves. They worked hard in the field. They grew yard birds, which are the chickens. When you actually had to make fried chicken, you had to slaughter that bird, you had to pluck that bird, you had to gut the bird. You actually, maybe had to brine it. You also had to find lard and melt that lard down. And then you had to bread it, and then you had to fry it. That's a whole process. So fried chicken didn't happen every day. And now as Americans, we consume so much of things like fried chicken that it loses its novelty, it loses its specialness. And so I just wanted to kind of make people think about it. Like, look, I have a limited amount of fried chicken, and I'm gonna have to fight for it if I really want to get it, and that's what makes it special. Beyond that, it tastes good.
Glad to hear that, Joan.
Chef, when you have some time and maybe sneak off and eat somewhere special in the city, where do you like to go that maybe might be a little bit lesser known or out of the beaten path?
I barely have time to sneak off these days, but I have a 4-year-old son, so I kind of cater to him when he wants to go eat. And a fairly well-known place is Tutabella, which we both love. We go there a lot. He's always asking for pizza. In Ravenna, there's Mia Posto. But beyond that, I love Spinace. I love that restaurant. I love Manoon. I love Delancey. I guess I named 3 pizza places now.
You did live in Italy briefly,
Yeah,
right?
I did, yeah.
That's right. I wanted to read something from the menu at Junebaby. Southern cuisine has always had and continues to have stereotypical connotations, seen through the eyes of most Americans as inferior, unsophisticated, and unhealthy. Southern food reflects hard times and resourcefulness, and is nothing short of beautiful. What dishes of your Southern food are healthy?
Are healthy. I think the entire menu is healthy, and that's one. I limit fried chicken to Sunday for that reason. I don't want people to come to my restaurant and eat fried chicken 4 days out of the week. It's one time, and then you enjoy it. But I was
because
very.
Isn't some of this food, by definition, guilty pleasure?
Yeah, they are. It's comforting. It's homey. But for the most part, when I opened up Junebaby, I had that thought in my mind. I'm not gonna cook with a ton of lard. Bacon's not in everything. A little bit, but I had a thoughtful approach to the entire menu to make sure that my neighborhood, Ravenna, can come to that restaurant 3 or 4 times a week and not feel like they need to go run 7 miles afterwards.
What's wrong with running 7 miles?
Well, if you eat fried chicken every day, you will have to.
Tell us about the new restaurant, Lucinda Grain Bar. First of all, who is Lucinda? And why should we be looking forward to this restaurant, which opens in
1 more week or so.
1 more week.
December 8th, we plan to open to the public. So Lucinda, it's 2 people in my family. One was my great-grandmother, who I actually did not get to meet. Her name was Lucindai, so she had an I in the end of the name, not an A. And then also my sister, her name is Alzadia Lucinda. So my mother decided to name my sister after her grandmother, which is my great-grandmother. And my sister is my business partner. Not many people know that, but she is my silent business partner.
Well, the secret's out now.
And she's like the silent little bee that stings all the time.
Don't tell her about the show.
but my great grandmother, from stories that was told to me, and also knowing my grandmother, which was her mother. My grandmother was a stern woman. She had Native American blood in her. She had like very distinct facial features. She was beautiful. And she sat back at nighttime and had a Crown Royal whiskey and just kind of sat there in her little luxury. And like I wanted a place that kind of represented her and my sister. My sister's the same way. She's stern, she's mean, she's beautiful. She's all of that. And so
I think some stinging is going to occur.
Yeah, the stinging.
Just guessing, not sure.
But I wanted a restaurant or another location that represented those figures in my life, and it made sense to name the location after them because I wanted a beautiful place, stern, that'll give you a little sting, which is a bar.
But Grain Bar, I have read about the Washington State University Bread Lab in Mount Vernon, Washington. And your new restaurant seems like it builds a bit on some of that groundbreaking work on ancient and heirloom grains.
Yeah, so we're definitely working with a lot of ancient grains at the restaurant. That's where the grain part comes in the name. In both restaurants currently, Junebaby and Salare, we use a lot of ancient grains. I've been working with ancient grains for the last like 5 years or so, maybe 6 years, since being back here in Seattle. And it was kind of eye-opening coming back here to Seattle and realize the plethora of grains and various product that we actually had here that we didn't know about. We just think about our salmon and mushrooms and foraging, but we're like a grain belt here in the Pacific Northwest, and we supply a lot of product to the rest of the country. And I realized the beauty of these grains and the harm that we're doing to ourselves by not actually utilizing these beautiful grains that we have here.
We've refined
so much of our diet to commodity, mass-produced items that our body doesn't even know how to process it. And so when we strip away, all these nutrients and brands in the outer parts of these grains, like we're not giving our body the kickstart to kind of digest and process some of the things that we're putting in our body. If you put just strict carbohydrates into your body, it turns it into sugar, and then all of a sudden you're wondering why your hips are getting bigger and your stomach is getting bigger because like your body can't process all of this and get it out. And so like the beauty, of using ancient grains is like they are here for a reason. They're natural, they're nature, they're going to be able to, your body's going to be able to absorb it and release it at the same time, and they're flavorful.
So I want to remind the audience, we'll run out of time if you don't line up. If you have a question, certainly do go to where the microphone is. But at your restaurant, these ancient and heirloom grains are going to be featured and heavily described because, well, it's a bar.
It's a bar.
Bars.
And most alcohol are made from grains, and so we're going to be focused on single pour kind of alcohols. Bourbon and whiskeys and scotch over the rocks or not over the rocks neat. My entire pastry program is actually built into this space too, so it's a commissary for all the restaurants, and so we're now also focusing on incorporating more of these grains, the heirloom grains, actually into our entire programs throughout all the restaurants. But for the most part, like the savory part of this bar, we will have a lot of ancient grains, some things that people are familiar with and not familiar with. Kamut, freekeh, einkorn, all the farros, all kind of cereals and wheats and grains.
Hi, audience. Hi. Thanks for joining.
Hello. I'm very curious, as a chef, what dish you enjoy cooking most, and what dish you enjoy you really like seeing somebody unexpectedly enjoy, and I understand they may not be the same, and why would be interesting to me. Thank you.
So that's probably like the hardest question. A lot of guests ask, like, what's your favorite dish on the menu? What do you like cooking? I'm a pretty simple person when it comes to cooking at home. I like one-pot wonders because I don't have the time to cook like I cook in the restaurants. I also don't have the labor and the team behind me in my home kitchen. So, I mean, I don't know. That's hard to answer because, like, I'm a very simple person. And the reality, if anyone really knows me, I love burgers. So, like, I love actually cooking burger. My home burger.
Yeah. I'm wondering, in many of your restaurants, you're highlighting Southern cuisine. In the Grain Bar, you're you're looking into something that grows here really well, right? Are there places where in this restaurant these two things will come together? Are you learning from the South and what you do in the grain bar, or are you, is there a fusion happening there? Or what?
From the different restaurants, or?
Yeah, because I'm wondering about that, where the Southern and the Northwest meet. It seems like they're meeting at.
So I think the Junebaby restaurant is where the Southern and the Northwest meets, because I'm using a lot of the Northwest ingredients to create a Southern menu. Salare incorporates everything from the Northwest ingredients. Again, I'm using some of the same farmers from Salare and Junebaby. And so, Salare represents the Pacific Northwest and also my culinary journey. I think when we think about when we're creating a menu for Lucinda, it's going closer to the Pacific Northwest cuisine in a sense. We're using a lot of the native grains that grow here. Most of our ingredients are going to be forage or found in the waters here. So I wanted to distinctly have separation with each restaurant as I create them, so that they have their own identity, so that if you decided to come to Lucinda and have a cocktail and a snack, when you go to Junebaby, it's something different. When you finish at Salare, you don't feel like you had the same thing at each restaurant. So.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. First off, I'd like to congratulate you on your recent successes.
Thank you.
That's a really neat thing to be able to perform and then be rewarded like that, acknowledged. I would like to know what's coming next for you, Chef. You have a restaurant opening in a week, and what are you tracking next? Where are you looking for inspiration?
Yeah, that's funny that you asked that. It's like, should I be thinking about the next thing yet? I haven't. I haven't, finished the thing that I'm working on right now. But I mean, honestly, I'm always thinking 3 to 4 years in advance, and trying to figure out how to make my moves. I'm trying to get a palace like a Tom here, ballroom. Yeah, I brought the mayor a cake, and he brought her a palace in the ballroom. So, but
perfect comparison.
Things that I want to work on is I want to start my own nonprofit, and that's something that I'm actively working on. I want to be able to give back on my own accord, in a sense, because I give back so much. I think as restaurateurs and chefs, we're always asked to give in so many manners. But I want to be kind of direct in my giving and have a centralized impact on a certain group, and kind of give back in that sense. So to answer your question shortly, I'm working on a nonprofit after Lucinda.
So your father is here this evening, Eduardo Jordan.
The real Junebaby.
And I wonder what influence did he have on your restaurants, your cooking, your sense of food?
So I decided to name Junebaby after my dad when I was debating on what I was going to actually do with Junebaby. It initially started as I was going to do barbecue. I love barbecue. My dad taught me how to grill and how to smoke meats. We would dig pits at the house and put a pig in there and roast them off, or he showed me how to cut the oil drums and create your own little barbecue grill. And he knew to stay out of the kitchen because my mom and my grandmother, they were the beasts in the kitchen. So he knew to stay out. So he took me out to the grill. So, much love for him teaching me how to cook with fire. But yeah, he's the man behind the wood and the grill.
And smoke is an ingredient just about at Junebaby. I know that sounds sort of funny, but why is smoke so important?
From a historical standpoint, smoke and fire preserved a lot of ingredients. That's how a lot of people were able to eat into the winter, into the lesser abundant periods in time. And so we continue tradition from smoking meats, from drying meats, to actually smoking vegetables too. If you had our smoked carrot dish, it's amazing.
Amazing. Hi.
Hello. Happy Eduardo Jordan Day.
Aw.
That was awesome.
There you go.
You talked a little bit about this earlier and now just most recently with the nonprofit, but I wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience as a person of color in the culinary world. And then, two-part question. How does that affect the impact you want to make going forward and what you want to see in the culinary world in the next 20 to 40 to 50 to 60 years?
Let's see. Let me see. I can quickly answer that question. As a young, interested culinarian, I knew that when I was going to go to culinary school that I was going to be on my own. I knew that my mom and my dad could not afford to actually put me to culinary school. So that's one. It's like I knew I had to be extremely focused, and I knew that that weight of that expense is going to be on me. So, as I think about youth now going into culinary arts, some of my employees currently, I want to figure out how to give back to them, to give them scholarships, to be able to give them opportunities. And maybe even like, look, you don't need to go to culinary school. Come into my program and we're going to guide you through. I got 3 restaurants here that we can teach you the ropes. Just me going through my path was a very difficult path because I didn't have a lot of people to relate to. So I didn't actually have a mentor that I can call up when I had a hard day at the French Laundry or Lincoln Restaurant.
You also worked at the herb farm, right?
I did, and that was a beautiful, beautiful place with Jerry. And so I just didn't have, that go-to. And sadly, like, I didn't even have people to actually, like, read up on. There was Patrick Clark when he passed away. There's Marcus Samuelson, and he was just making his moves when I was a young culinarian. But there wasn't many of us to be like, you know what, I'm going to make it just like that guy did or that woman did. And so now I'm hoping that I'm an inspiration for many other folks that look like me and act like me and come from the places that I came from, that hopefully I can inspire them.
What I'd like to do now is put your accomplishments in perspective. Junebaby not only won James Beard Awards, Junebaby not only won restaurant awards, Time Magazine listed eating at Junebaby as one of the top 100 things to do in the world in 2018. We are talking bucket list kind of stuff. What does that mean to you?
When the Times came out, the actual Times, I didn't know how to process it. I was like, I don't know, like it's hard to process something of that nature because that's not what I was technically striving for. I wasn't trying to become the best restaurant in the world, the best restaurant in the country. I wanted to present my cuisine from my lens as an African-American chef, which I didn't see that happening much in this country. A lot of the new, cool Southern restaurants were created by white chefs. And I felt like I had a story to tell. And so I kind of put horse blinders on and presented my story in the form of Junebaby, and people recognized it. But I wasn't like actively, seeking that type of attention, which it's a blessing. I'm not like throwing it in the trash or anything, but it's hard to process that. And with certain limelight comes expectations. People assume that you need to be on top of your game every day, and we try, but we're human. We're humans running a restaurant. We're not robots. So there's mistakes that happen, and so all of a sudden you got this Yelp review of how this restaurant shouldn't be the best restaurant in the country, and I'm like, oh my goodness, everyone's a critic.
Poke at the
but yeah,
king,
right? Bring them down. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I tell my staff, like, we achieve certain goals, we achieve certain awards, blah, blah, blah. But, what we did from day one is what we're going to do day 2, 3, day 300, day 1,000. Stay consistent, stay true, believe in ourselves, and, keep on moving forward. And I'm fine with that.
We have been talking food and restaurants with Eduardo Jordan of Junebaby, Salare, and soon to open Lucinda Grain Bar. We will take a break and return in February. Happiest of holidays, and thanks so much for watching. Thank you.